Hey guys, and welcome. I'm Enigmius, and this is World of Tanks. Today, we're talking about camping. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, camping is kind of a defensive thing that people do. Usually involves taking cover somewhere, hiding behind a structure or a large rock or a terrain feature, and then staying there, waiting for the enemy to present themselves, basically. Now, there's definitely a time and place for that strategy where it makes a lot of sense. You can set up ambushes. It depends on the tank and the map and the situation, really. Unfortunately, there's a group of players, and it's not a small group of players, that adopts this as sort of their primary strategy in any given match. Is they look for cover, they find cover, and then they don't move unless they absolutely have to. And the easiest way to see how that can be harmful to a team's success is to look at a match where that's all people are doing is camping. I found just such a match. We're going to take a detailed look at that, but first, I wanted to show this off. This is my M24 Chaffee. It's an American Tier 5 light tank. Right now it's very stock. I haven't had a chance to upgrade it. I literally just spent all of my free experience and my experience to buy the thing at the end of a very long grind on an M5 Stuart. It's kind of an interesting tank, and it's that grind that makes it so rare. You don't see too many of these in the game, so I'm looking forward to upgrading it and messing around with it. But for today, the example that we're using today features my M12. This is an American Tier 7 SPG, also known as artillery. It's basically a giant barrel that has its own vehicle to carry it. It doesn't even have a turret. It's too large. I love the look of these things, especially any of the SPGs that have this huge barrel sitting on it. And of course, the breech and all of the loading gear is behind there. We're not really here to talk about my SPG, even though I'm very proud of it, but this is the one that I'll be using in the match, which starts now. So to start off, let's just kind of take a look at the map as best we can. Like I say, it's a match in progress. I realized what was going on and decided to start recording. The map is pretty straightforward. There's a big hill up here that we don't need to concern ourselves with, fortunately. There's 4 lanes, really. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here that you can use to easily pass between the different areas. Now, that's not to say that you can't pass through in other areas, just that the terrain won't be as forgiving, I guess you could say. And then, of course, there's areas with water that are just death traps. You don't want to drive into them at all. We've got little villages in and around here, and there's another one over here, and then there's the big one over here. I'm not going to draw it because then I'll be drawing over the icons around the flag. That really helps to provide cover for artillery and snipers and things of that nature when you're trying to capture or defend the flag, depending on what sort of perspective you're looking at it from. The main thing being that these are sort of the primary means of visible cover. The other means is actually the sand dunes themselves, which are like little mountains that you can hide in. Makes it very interesting and also very tricky for artillery because, as you can see, like for example, this area down here, this is one big dune and this is the crest of the dune. Guys on this side of the dune I can't hit from where I am down here. So it definitely adds a certain element to the map that we have to be aware of. Our group, our team, our platoon of tanks is basically in 2 groups right now. There's this group over here that's comprised of a heavy tank, 2 tank destroyers, and 3 medium tanks. There's this group over here that is 4 heavy tanks and 2 tank destroyers. One of the tank destroyers is hiding. He's under here, and the other tank destroyer is right here. And then the 4 heavies, these 2 are stacked, the one on top of the other 4. And then we've got a heavy tank and a light tank down here. And that's basically our group. We've already killed an enemy tank. He was basically scouting, passed through and got popped very quickly. And then I noticed we're defending, but we're defending pretty defensively. And that's kind of what camping really is. So in this case, when we're on a map and our goal is to defend this flag or kill the enemy, and their goal is to take this specific flag or kill us, this kind of camping is not necessarily entirely inappropriate, but there are still certain things to watch out for, and more importantly, it allows us to illustrate why we don't do it in matches where we're supposed to be capturing the enemy flag ourselves or killing the enemy. Those are the win conditions. You can't go full defensive and just sit there, otherwise you'll lose because you haven't met the win conditions. Pretty straightforward. So the easiest way to go about this is let certain segments of the match pass by and then just kind of recap, see what's going on, what's about to happen, all that good stuff. And in this case, we had a bunch of enemy tanks come through this way, lit these heavies, this cluster of heavies and tank destroyers, and promptly turned around and said no goddamn way and left. And that's sort of, unfortunately, where people stop thinking about it. As soon as the cluster of tanks disappears, they're like, not our problem anymore. What these guys did, whether they intended to do it or not, is they showed their whole team that almost all of our heavies are clustered right there. So if you're a thinking kind of person and you see 4 heavies down here, and you look at the top of the screen and see they've only got 5 heavies, well geez, that means this whole area down here only has 1 heavy in and amongst the other tanks that might be there. So if we want to make a push, this side seems like a pretty good idea. Now this tank destroyer is going to show up repeatedly throughout the match. I had a lot of respect for him by the time the match was over because he survived the whole thing, despite the fact that if we had people awake on our team, he wouldn't have. He made it. You can't really criticize him for surviving. But he did kill our 1 heavy that was over here. So as soon as all of the action starts flowing down this way, this guy who was in the middle, he slides over looking for a piece of the action, but he doesn't go far enough. He doesn't actually give himself a chance to do anything. And now the enemy knows where all of our heavies are, so they're prepared to send their squishy but deadly tanks down this way, and we'll see how that works out. Not surprising. First of all, there's our little tank destroyer friend again. I told you he's going to keep popping up. That's where he is. We've got our 4 heavies still down here. They lost 1 tank destroyer. And this guy... Actually, no. One of the tank destroyers over here is now here. That's what it was. And then this guy, he's complaining about a lack of support. Right? We had the medium tank and the tank destroyer up here, and then all the bad guys came in this way, blasted them, and now they're in here somewhere. And this guy, who started out this little adventure, he was here, moved over here, couldn't do anything, moved back here. By the time he got here, these tanks were dead. He's now complaining about not having enough support. If you had have been on the front line for these guys, maybe they'd still be around to support you. Regardless, that's how it's shaping up on the west flank, as we've got... I still don't know what the hell this guy's major malfunction is. But we've got a tank destroyer and a heavy, we've got a bunch of enemy tanks in here, and we've got this flank seemingly kind of sort of maybe a little bit well covered by 4 heavies, who are still kind of all bunched up in the corner, and a tank destroyer, and me, of course. We can't forget me, artillery, doing what I can as I can. One of the frustrating things about this is when you've got 2 groups on either side of the map who refuse to take the initiative and push, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, trying to get targets, trying to support someone. It's a little bit difficult to do what I need to do properly, as opposed to when you keep one group of enemy tanks lit for any length of time, where artillery really starts to shine. But that's a whole other story. even though it is related to camping and not lighting targets and just hiding, your artillery is going insane. It's just a thing. They need red icons to survive. That's what they do. And here he is again. He just moved a little ways from up here, but still. 4 heavy tanks. The enemy still has artillery up here somewhere. We know that. This guy is keeping all of these guys lit, and none of them have the testicular fortitude to advance and knock off the remaining 5% of his hull so that he's no longer able to spot for the artillery. Again, overly defensive. There are things happening that warrant your attention, and it's not getting that attention, and then people wonder why they get blasted. And it's because just because he can't shoot you doesn't mean he's not a threat. That's the key. And when you camp and you let the other guy just sit there because he's camping too, people start wondering, why is artillery allowed to one-shot us? This guy still down here. I think he just exists for free experience for the enemy. And then, of course, down here, this guy is starting to ramp up the complaints about a lack of support. He's going in with only a tank destroyer, and he's going to get blown up because he's got no support, and it's not fair, and it's stupid, and it's dumb. Stupid failed team. This is just one of many tanks that are about to appear from this little area here. It looked like they were maybe going to camp themselves for a little while there, maybe regroup, figure out what was going on. They knew there were guys out here. Our guys probably didn't know how few, or they would have pushed by now. But the bottom line is, we're not in a great shape. We're not in a good position over here. And I'm still trying to figure out what the hell to do with myself, which will involve this reticle coming down this way and hopefully supporting these dumb sons of bitches before they get blown up. So, heavy tank advanced over the hill, found all the enemy tanks, and he turned and ran. So, tank destroyer wisely said, I'm not sticking around to get blown up. So he's looking for a place to snipe. And now the enemy is realizing we're running out of time, guys. We've either got to finish off all the green tanks, which are red tanks to them, or we've got to capture the flag. These guys were doing a little camping of their own up here, it's got to be said. Clearly, this late in the match, for them to be coming down here, 2 tank destroyers, looks like maybe a medium, even their artillery is down on the push. That's their artillery. Who can say, really? But they're realizing they're running out of time, so they're pushing. And it's crunch time. We got guys over here. We're not very strong over on this side. We've got guys coming down here. They've got some meat to their shots that could be a threat to these guys down here. If these guys down here get destroyed, or if these guys get blown up and any of these guys survive, I'm the next one to die because I'm a very easy target. And then we've got a tank destroyer here to carry the day. It's just... It's a bad scene. At this point, all we can do is hope that the match ends before we're all blown up and we win for having not allowed them to capture the flag. And this is how it ends. Heavy Tank is beaking off in chat about failed groups not supporting heavies. This guy got blown up, and I was able to destroy the T-29 that did the destruction just after this guy got blown up. So this whole flank is clear. There's no enemy tanks or friendly tanks over there. It's done. Up here, we've got 2 heavy tanks remaining against this blob here. Looks like a medium, and our friend, the tank destroyer, who survived the whole match as a scout. Our tank destroyer and me. So we survived with 4 tanks. They had 2 left. They failed to capture the base or destroy all of us. Technically, it's a win. If I were to try and sum up camping in, 1 or 2 sentences, it would be presenting yourself as a static element in a dynamic environment. And that's why it doesn't really work. Is the whole idea is that the battlefield is always changing. Tanks are moving, tanks are fighting, tanks are being destroyed. Strength is, shifting as the match progresses. And as tankers, we want to be able to assess what's going on. We want to be able to decide what we need to do in order to serve a particular objective, and then we need to execute. Very rarely does that involve, okay, just keep doing what we're doing, which happens to be nothing. You saw in the match that I showed you, even though we were in a fully defensive posture, for good reason, because of the nature of the match, we let our positions be known to the enemy in such a way that they could devise working strategies to send their weaker tanks where our heavy tanks weren't, and to send their stronger tanks where our heavy tanks were, including their artillery at the end of the match when they were just trying to secure a win. There's one other element that we can't overlook. It's very, very important, and that's the fun factor of a match where things are moving, things are in flux, things are changing. We're moving to flank the enemy. We're moving to support these guys that aren't far away, but could use a little bit of help, and we just happen to notice that we got nothing to do and they need a few extra guns. Going over and supporting them. It's very, very difficult to assess what's going on in a team trying to win when you look at the minimap and you see these tanks that haven't moved since the beginning of the match and saying, these guys are non-contributors. These guys aren't going to move unless a tank drives in front of them or shoots them in the ass and gives them motivation to move for self-preservation reasons. And we could really have used their support because our enemy is coming at us with all their tanks. That's why we dislike the whole idea of camping, is because you're not really taking part in the match if you don't really know what's going on in the match because you're not involved in what's going on in the match. So ultimately, part of the learning process for any given tank, any given strategy, any given game is learning the difference between when you're camping and when you're taking a defensive position because you expect something to happen that's significant. Most of the time when you see tanks not moving in public groups, they don't have the first clue what's going on, and they would have a much easier time learning if they would set themselves up to experience it, even if that means getting blown up from time to time. If you want to leave your comments and feedback below, feel free to do so. I'll probably be doing more videos focusing on World of Tanks as time goes on. I'm really enjoying the game, almost to my detriment. Don't we all? If you want to be notified when I add the next video, you can subscribe to my channel. That's one way. The other way, you can follow me on Twitter at Enigmius1. You can also follow me on Google++ Enigmius1. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.